All right, we are live. Delicious. Cool. We're gonna have a guest tonight. For a little bit, and we'll wait for folks to kind of roll in to that off. So, yeah, it should be interesting. We're actually a community member, so I'll get that set up once some folks get in here. So give it a little bit, and I'll get that set up. But those of you watching the VOD, thanks for being here. Appreciate the continued support on that front. Really enjoy all the comments that come in. I do a lot of responding to the comments across the board. Several people post VODs, but I go in and make sure our comments are all sort of liked and up to date and answered if necessary, so I tend to see a lot of them. Hey, Thulan. Chaz, Solo, what's going on? Hey, Lich. It's like Discord. The Discord chatters that I was watching before I came in here just all rolled in at once. Hey, Migs, Dragon, Infield. Infield any. Infield, I was just looking at a airsoft version of an infield. Hey John, Kinji, Defiant Possum, Tupac, the Shacker. Off work early today, holiday tomorrow, good time. Yeah, it is that time of year, right? One of the best American holidays. Hey, Nicodemus. Jum Jabba. Hello. By the way, thanks for not having fall damage active in the zone after Shaded Dunes. I think maybe we reduced fall damage at some point during the test, because I think some people were getting kind of bug smash at the bottom of Wormsbane. Hey Drew, what's going on? Crazy to see Night Harbor from this angle. Yeah, it's there's a lot there already, and we're not finished. Tupac said we found a few stairs that if you jumped on them, we took like 100 plus damage. It was great. Yeah, a year or so ago, we when we decided to turn fall damage off, we had a variety of different bugs. It was funny. You could gate and just the, like, I could have sworn it was the vertical difference between where you gated from and where your bind spot was. You could wind up taking damage. There's all sorts of fun stuff going on. Like sliding down a hill. So it's been worked on. I think the bug that we saw during the playtest wasn't really as much maybe it wasn't as much a fall damage, like controller issue, as maybe some sort of setting in the, maybe it was a distance thing, or somewhere like where you were on the Z-axis or something was messing with the formula. I don't know. Squishy Pancake, thank you for the follow. So as I was mentioning before, most of you got in. John said some issue with negative Z value and fall damage, I think. Yeah, that makes sense. Hope I've recovered from the weekend. I hope you've recovered from the weekend, Chinny D. How many 12-hour plus sessions did you actually wind up doing? Mulberry Cottager. Welcome. Oh, I know what zone you're talking about now. Dragonstead. Me and a group of level 3 to 7s were scouting the rats, drakes, and undead area. Wound up dropping 200 feet off the cliff. Ah, you were in Fallen Pass. Yeah, I've gotta get chopping on that zone over the next couple of weeks. Get more into it, but for those of you that don't know, it's the zone that's over here at the base of the at the base of the Fallen Keep. Fallen Watch, sorry. Still recovering. Mig said first was nice enough to figure out exactly how much EXP I lost and get back to me. Oh, that's nice. And he took the time to level himself to my level, kill himself, and then rose himself. All right. Chinny says I managed to put in 40 hours in 3 sessions. That is amazing. Lorraine says, hey Sean, hey chat, just want to say thank you to you and the team. Had such an amazing time this weekend playing. Brought so much nostalgia, and I met a bunch of great people, grouped with a bunch of great people, got to explore 2 different dungeons and the deep. Fantastic to hear. I'm glad to hear that people are meeting each other. It's nice to see that happening. What the game's all about. Hum Jump says, made the level 11 on PvP. This full plate. Nice. That last night I played a little bit on Hair Draw. Like it. Have you guys seen a number spike since the playtest? What do you mean? Where? I mean, we've seen improved numbers, but it's also humble brag. Our numbers are always improving. Now, I mean, but we have seen, I think over the course of, I'd have to check, but I think we've probably added 200-300 people to Discord. Wow. I didn't even have a chance to scroll down and see. Nick. Fast Draw McGraw. What was it? Was it a spammer? The name is pretty out there. Minstrel. Okay, viewbot spam. I was like, I wasn't sure where that was going. Account signups and newsletters. We'd have to look and see how many additional accounts we have since. We'll look at the difference between before the weekend and after. We've got a pretty meaty chunk of registrations already, which is pretty nice. Was Ollie or someone able to implement any fixes for the server lag issues? Darius asked. I could have sworn Chip checked in something yesterday or maybe today already that they're looking at. Do you have any medication available for M&M withdrawal symptom? It's weird because the only thing that came to mind that was like kind of smart ass to say is more cowbell, but it has no relevance to this. But I just pictured Will Ferrell in a belly shirt as the medication in this case. I would say I don't know, hop on the P99 or Project Farm or check out the I don't know the current state of the most recent TLPs, but Nick is faster than you, Nicodemus. But he was champion of those old whack-a-mole games. It's his RTS skills. His actions per minute. Ridiculous. Yep, newsletter will definitely help assembling that now. Right in. Thank you for the follow. Town performance, a server capacity issue with that? No, it's not a server issue. I think it was a network traffic issue and maybe some continuations of issues related to some of the trickery we're doing with Sphere of Influence. I guess it would help if I did a better job of memorizing what was being discussed in Slack so I could answer your questions better, but my brain is old and full of mush, and there's a lot of different things going on at the same time, so usually I just let the programmer people do programmer stuff and pray on Sundays. Oh, mush brain, you feel me? Yeah. That's one of the filters we put stuff through. It's like, is this game playable by old mush brain like Sean? And if so, then we're okay. We just gotta have a sliding scale. It's like mush brain can play it all the way up through big brains. Nick says there's definitely some server lag changes we need to test in the not too distant future. To which Defiant Possum's like, don't do that to me, bro. Hey, we're letting our bots look at it now, and then if all goes well, so let me look. We're going to have a guest from the community on tonight to talk about some interesting stuff for a bit. Stephen W. Leet, thank you for the follow. Chinny? No, not Chinny tonight, but if Chinny ever wants to come on and chat, I'm always open. Surprise guest, yeah. It's a topic that interests me, so I hope it interests you. But it's not like a EQ guest or anything like that, alright? Skeezy727 said finally able to be here for a live stream, usually only able to watch the YouTube VODs. Hey, thank you to everybody that watches the YouTube VOD. I usually say it before you guys get in here, just because I know the only way you'll hear it is if you're watching the VODs, but it is really cool to read all the comments and see the level of engagement on YouTube. Hey, Dishi. I felt like I said it weird just then. I think I got monster mouth. Has the team done any work on the spawning of resource nodes on the north side of Night Harbor and Sungreet Strand? I don't think so yet, but I've got the feeling that Nick would be the one to answer that. I don't know if he's had a chance to go in there. Keith was just working on a resource node tool, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, we're still kind of recovering from the weekend and getting back into the groove of stuff and getting our work done. Nick said it's on his list, but July is here. I think after the holiday tomorrow, people hopefully will be rested up and we'll start chipping away at everything that needs to get done this month in order for us to stay on schedule. Excuse me. Drop a giant meteor on it. Borg Manson on what? The giant domed castle. Oh man. give it a year or two of being live before we start blowing it up again. Hey, Sarenth. Funny to see such a bird's eye view after trying. Too hard to navigate around on foot. It's not that hard to navigate this city. It could be crazier. It may actually become crazier at some point. But it's not that hard to navigate. Ang7 says layout isn't nearly as terrible as some of the early Q map. I will forever get lost in Kanos, and that was the first zone I ever spawned into. But honestly, in all seriousness, there's some solid thoroughfares, and it's not that complex once you kind of wrap your head around it. We'll probably be doing some changes to aspects of the layout in the coming months, a little bit here and there, but more on that later. Nick said, "Can I play this short?" Yeah, let me. Ugh. You're killing me, YouTube. Make me sign into the other account. Blah blah blah. Yada yada. Yes, that one. I was gonna play it. I have a premium account for my normal account, so I don't get commercials and shit, and it doesn't cut me off when I'm listening to music for a long time here, listening to the soundtrack. But I also don't necessarily want you guys seeing my recommended list. You'll be like, "What in the world does this guy want?" So, is the plan still to break up the city into different zone lines? There's no plan for it at the moment. If at some point Ollie says, "Hey," it kind of makes sense from a tech standpoint. On the design side, I think we can do it pretty easily. Tessa Blue says, "Took me less than a day to really get the basics of the city." It doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't take long. Not just saying that to be condescending. Here, I will play the short that our video editor, Blink, has assembled for us. Is it cut off at the bottom? Nope, not really. All right. Can you guys see it? Borgas, I don't know much about the game. Are the docks functional? Are there ships that players can control? The docks are quasi-functional. They were really functional, and then the ship started eating people, and then we deactivated them for a bit. Eventually, there will be a degree of control that players will be able to have over the ships. Yeah, that's our plan at least. Esan, what's going on, dude? Dumped into the ocean to be shark food on zone. Then more days. No, the ship was literally killing people. Nick in the ship got in a fight, and needless to say, Nick got his ass handed to him and then dumped in the ocean. So we turned it off. All right, I'm gonna hit play. I'll run it a couple times just because I haven't played a short like this, so we'll see what happens. Was there a race class breakdown? We'll pull that data, Tacit Blue. We're still pulling data and stuff. We'll get all of that together. If it's not in the newsletter, which in theory it could be, I don't know why it couldn't be. Still got a few days before we send that out. Then it'll be posted in Discord, or maybe both. What's up, Daddy? When can we expect another playtest, or better yet, when is the project alpha beta launch? So let's hit better yet first. We have a command here that is FAQ. It will take you to our early access page. Early access page is broken down into several sections. I think the lower section includes our roadmap, which has several different roadmaps, and background on the project, things like our expenses to date and how we're going to handle that moving forward. So you get a feel for like the question that comes up is like, what makes you think as an indie team you can do this? Shit like that. Let's see. Yeah, so that should get you started. It'll take you to the early access part of our website. Another play test. We were still contending with some lag issues. In that I'm saying it in like a very general sense. Honestly, technically, I'm not even sure if it really qualifies as lag. It was more like maybe network issues, but whatever. Lag's fine. And maybe that is fine. Anyways, we had some less than perfection going on going into the playtest, and we had some ideas on how to fix that, but we didn't want to screw with that going into the playtest, potentially break something else, and so we went in with sort of the problems we knew instead of introducing some problems we didn't know. Now that the playtest is over, we can start implementing some of the fixes, and then we'll test those internally, throw some of our headless clients at it to simulate some load. If that's looking good, then who knows, maybe we'll have a little stress test to make sure that shit works. So smart call on not introducing the fixes. Yeah, this isn't our first rodeo. We got some cautious Andes or whatever you'd call it these days on the team. All right, well, the short is awesome, but it's short. So, boom, we'll do that. We'll then reload our OST. Makes me want to listen to the Fallen Past track. Here you go. Yeah, so we you guys were talking about the numbers. We were definitely happy with the numbers. The participation was nice. Thank you everybody for checking it out. Yeah, we've got some nice support. I mean, we've got a really nice number of registered accounts already. We're still a good ways out, so that's a good sign, hopefully. The numbers are still growing instead of plateauing or going down, so see you, Daddy. Hey, Quantos. Been listening to the OST all day at work, very soothing. Yeah, it's great to work to. Hello, Dracula said, I got to play a bit at the beginning of the test. It's really coming along. Hey, thank you. What's up, Quicksana? Do you know when it will ship? Here, check this out. Here's a link for you, Salted Hash 99. That page has got so much information on that topic for you. The short answer is we're looking at Q1 2026 to go into early access. So just pin that. I guess, is that here? I'm so bad at this. What do I do with this message? I've got a Stream Deck. I've had it forever. I've had it longer than this project's existed. When the whole like COVID thing was going on, I bought all the toys, but I just you know what? I kind of get what you're saying now. Like, I should actually add that button to my Stream Deck. I see what you're saying. I should do that. I'll do that later. And that I say that, and then I'll never do it. I'll forget to do it. My notepad of things to do is actually, it's disintegrated. I've gone through all the pages. So, just remind me. Salted Hash, you're very welcome. Share that with people that may have similar questions, if you don't mind. Hey, Death by Gnomes. Puddin says, Robot, after running around this playtest, I've realized how pristine Night Harbor looks. Given the amount of halflings and goblins, I can't wait for how much fun graffiti will end up being in place. Perhaps some of it even wayfinding. Maybe. The governor of Night Harbor likes to... He likes the city to be... despite the dangers and adventure that you can find in Night Harbor, there are certain things he doesn't really like. And random ass graffiti on the walls is not something he likes. You know what? So let's see. We're 30 minutes in. Let's bring our guest in. And so it's gonna take me a minute to kind of fidget and stuff with Streamlabs to get everything set up. But you guys can forgive me for that, right? Or you know what? we still have about a minute and 10 seconds left on the song. Let's let the song finish, and then then we'll do this because it's a great song. John said unforgivable, unfollowed. You'll be back. Listava says, ahoy, Sean. Greatly enjoyed the test as always. Team is doing a great job. Thank you, Listava. If Listava is happy, we are happy. All right, hit pause here. Cottager, are you out there? All right. So when you contact me on Discord, I will patch you through. I will get you set up, the video feed set up. And then they will be able to hear you if all goes according to plan. You will not be able to see me, so that may be a bit awkward, but you can see me on stream just because the one camera I'm using is already being used. And I think that's how it'll go. And then if you have screen share or anything like that you want to do, then we'll just figure it out on the fly. We'll do it live. Yeah, no worries. It's going to take me a minute to get oriented as well. So we spoke with Cottager in chat months ago about some academic work that he's doing, which was pretty interesting. And so he and I then hopped on a call and he ran me through the academic work that he's doing. I thought it was pretty cool. And in the name of having chats with people that have interesting things going on, not just like former Sony people or whatever, figured, hey, let's hop on and see what he's doing, and you guys can ask questions and all that good shit. So, all right, I'm gonna join the video call. Maybe, yeah. You moved your setup to a different part of the house.
Yeah, the other part of it seemed a little bit too much like a cave. I thought I'd try to get some light in here.
It was mad. It was like mad academic area. I was like,
It
oh,
was.
here's a person that's spending a lot of time like studying. Okay, so hold on. Let me switch to guest. See what happens there. Well, first I think in the past maybe I've done like a pop out and that made it easier. So I'll pop you out. And then I'll switch scenes and guest. Discord. So let's focus this on the right thing. See how that goes.
Yeah, let me know if you need me to adjust anything on my end,
Nah,
volume or something.
I think it'll wind up just being goofiness on my end. It's been a while since I've done one of these. So, forgive me if it takes a minute.
No worries. I'm
There
on
we
summer
go.
vacation.
Summer vacation.
Well, kind of a vacation. It's about 40 to 60 hours of work a week vacation.
Okay.
Hello.
Now you can see yourself.
I can. Yep. Yeah, the delay between our call and the stream is kind of freaking me out a little bit, but I'll get used to it.
Yeah, it's weird. I apologize for that. One of these days I would no, I made you disappear. One of these days Yeah, you mute the stream on your end, and then you can see
Yeah.
me on the stream. Okay, cool.
Yep, I muted the stream. Thank you.
Oh, it keeps doing. My setup for this is so goofy. It's so hacky. So here we go.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just practicing the rogue sneak.
Yeah, disappear, disappear.
Yeah.
I tell you what. Let's confirm that you guys can hear him. Okay, because I have the ability to turn him up more still if you need it. Cool. All right then. I mean, I think we're going. It's working. So let's just go with it then, and we'll fix anything that breaks. Oh yeah, I should probably be on screen too, huh? I was like, something looks odd. Something looks
Yeah.
missing. And I couldn't figure
Yeah, I'm
out what it
feeling lonely
was.
all out here. Yeah, yeah.
I was like, it looks good enough, but something seems odd. Up,
Yeah.
blunk. Oh, I wish I had like a magic sound, kind of a plop when I
Oh
appeared.
yeah, totally.
Plop.
There you go.
I'm moving myself around like I'm one of Zukin's animations of me. Hi guys.
It looks like you're surveying your domain there, down there in the corner.
Oh man, one of these days we'll get the production values up on this stream. Zukin, are there coconut horse sounds when I pop onto your screen as well? I forget.
Oh yeah. Gotta get the Monty Python bit going.
Damn, production values. You guys, everybody should be watching that stream, not so you can see ridiculous cutouts of me, but just because Zukin's put the effort in. Okay. So I tell you what, you're officially a guest. So why don't you tell people who you are and why you're here, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for having me on. It's a little hard to believe I'm here, given how I started on this project. But my name is Walter Stover. I'm just finished my second year of pursuing my doctorate in economics at George Mason University in Virginia. And okay, I'm being told that you all are a friendly group, so
They are
that's
friendly,
reassuring. All right.
mostly.
Uh, and I specialize in experimental economics and computational economics, which basically just means uh, I try to come up with ways to test economic hypotheses that don't involve us going out there and finding data in the world, but we try to make our own data, either in using human subject experiments or we simulate something that we're interested in. And I had some time to kill. So last semester, I was taking this computational economics class where we needed to come up with a project idea uh, that involved something economic related that was also highly spatialized. So spatial environments played a big role in the outcome. So people interacting with their environment, moving around the environment, that kind of thing. We had to create a computer simulation of this setup. And I was casting around for ideas. For whatever reason, I remembered, I used to play EverQuest back in the day, all the way back in '99. And I played all the way through, I think, Lost Dungeons. And I remember that there was this, how should I say, there was discussion over,
Controversy.
yeah, okay, controversy.
Come on,
I
don't
wasn't
shy
going to
away
say
from.
that.
Come on, man.
All
Controversy.
right.
There's some people talking shit. There's some people that were upset.
All right, well,
Use
you said it.
scientific
You said
terms.
it. I'm trying to be I'm trying to be what's called impartial, scientific observer. But yeah, you're right.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, there you
yeah,
go.
yeah. No. So there was some controversy over the addition of these books of knowledge and the planes of power expansion, because people were suddenly able to. Is a new kind of policy shock. There were people able to transport themselves in a completely new way. Setting aside wizards and druids could already teleport, and I was like, hey, this is a great idea for the class because it's a really specific event that happens in an environment that had already been running for some time. Is came in around 2002. It's highly spatialized because it's totally new form of transportation. And I was like, I wonder, and people are really discussing, they're very passionate about the effects that this policy had of what effects it had on game feel and also social network dynamics of how players connected with each other. So I'm like, I'm just going to simulate this. I got time to build a toy EverQuest simulation. I'm going to spin it up with simulated adventurers running around, going questing. I'm going to run the simulation, the simulated EverQuest for a certain amount of time, and then I'm going to code it so these portals appear in the simulation that suddenly allow these adventurers to transport from one place to the other instantaneously to different zones. And then I got my metrics. I have some metrics that I discuss more in the paper of how I quantify the characteristics of the social network. I keep a graph of all the players in the simulation, and I'm gonna run this experiment, and I'm gonna see what effect Planes of Power books had on the simulated version of EverQuest players and their social network dynamics. And wrote that up for the class. Got a good grade on it. I'm thinking about shopping around at a conference or something, but I started following you developing. I saw some of your interviews as part of research into EverQuest. I was trying to confirm what I was thinking initially, and we can talk more about my hypothesis later, my initial thoughts. But then I hit you up on Discord. I'm like, hey, or no, you saw me post on Discord, and here I am.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that you mentioned it. I thought in Discord, and I could have sworn maybe you were on a stream or so, and we kind of chatted, and it was like, and yeah, definitely hit you up in DMs or maybe ask you to hit me up. This stuff's always interesting. Just for just to be clear, I do not represent EverQuest or any actual whatever entity owns it today kind of setup. I am merely a fan of EverQuest, but one that worked on the game as the content lead during the period that we're discussing. So, yeah, I don't think I've done a disclaimer with any of the EQ people, but I figured a disclaimer would be good here, just because it's like one of those things where, just for clarity, that way no one thinks I'm representing the interests of EQ. But yeah, so I thought it was kind of interesting. I think I mentioned to you when I first hit you up that when I was at Big Point in Germany, working at an MMO company called Big Point there, we worked with a couple of academics from the University of Hamburg, or I guess a university in Hamburg, and they were looking into something, like I think they were economists as well, and they were looking at something that was kind of the usual money related game industry type thing. And when we finally had a chance to talk to them, because they were looking for something as well, to kind of like, what can we focus on? It'd be cool if we could do something and maybe you guys could derive value out of it, and blah, blah, blah. I asked them if anybody had worked on the concept of, we have a concept called LTV, right? Lifetime value. So a customer's lifetime value. And so, it's a metric that especially free to play companies really kind of value. It's like a good gauge of, well, I mean, it's the value of a customer. No shit. What I was curious about is if there was ever a social LTV, right? Like, what is the social lifetime value of certain players? Because the game that we were working on was a PvP game, and it was very much free to play with a history of pay to win. And so there was so much focus on the people that were actually paying. I was very curious to see if we had mapped and if we understood the value of certain players that weren't payers but had a huge impact on the retention of other players, right? And so even in a subscription based game or a game like ours, it would be maybe those people that are like key guild leaders that really sort of keep 100 people, 200 people engaged, or certain key players. And the definition of key would be something we'd have to dig into, like what actions are they taking to sort of maintain social cohesion or retention of other players. So they hadn't figured out anything crazy by the time I left there. A lot of this stuff's super complex, but so then when you popped up, I'm like, oh shit, this type of stuff is always very interesting. I'm sure I could find all sorts of questions for you. And then you had mentioned the thing that you'd worked on. So cool. And some people in chat are already chatting. Like Pop had a significant impact on the social environment. It changed the dynamic and forced interaction of players in the in-game world for the need of transportation. So we're going to get into some stuff like that. So you said you had a hypothesis, or you had some thoughts going into all of this.
Yeah, I did. And just as I saw earlier, someone asked if there was a link to the paper so they can read it later. It's not yet public, but I would like people to be able to read it. So I'm planning soon after this stream here, I'll go and make it public, and we'll figure out if y'all want to react, I could drop a link in Discord or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So going into this, I pretty much had the hypothesis that it did that this policy shock at introducing the plane of knowledge negatively affected social network dynamics. It just kind of felt like an intuitive based on my own experience. So I was fully expecting that to kind of be the result of running this simulation. And I was basing that on just kind of qualitative, narrative data, which is people saying, now the world feels empty, and druids and wizards no longer able to teleport. And there's a lot to unpack there already, but I'm just going to state that that was kind of my hypothesis. I wasn't going to be surprised if the simulation returned results showing that social network dynamics were kind of negatively affected. On the other hand, I had watched some, developer interviews with you, and one of the things I picked up was that one of the reasons this policy was implemented in the first place was because the constantly expanding game world was causing a kind of social pressure already, and which was emptying out kind of the old world, and that created a new set of problems where it was harder for people to connect with each other. There were concerns over the new player experience and that kind of thing. So I kind of held that on the other hand as well. So I was like, well, maybe it was the kind of lesser evil. I wasn't sure. So anyway, I ran the simulation, and I was pretty surprised because at least this preliminary kind of abstract version of the model, the simulation, is showing that very clearly that implementing these portals actually seems to greatly augment and boost the structure of the social network in the simulation, and even increase the dynamism of the social network. And what I mean by that, those two things, I'll just try to draw a little bit more here. By structure, I mean instead of one big clump of players all in one social network, where like they kind of all like kind of like one big guild, and maybe with like a lot of small players that didn't get into the guild. After the portals were introduced, you saw the formation of a lot of more medium-sized guilds that had clearly separate structures. So these are like subgraphs or components. And so that's what I mean by augmented the structure. There's more definition to it. It's not just one big clump of players. They kind of split off into their own groups. So that's structure. And then the other thing I want to draw out is dynamism. So there's very easy to implement social network metrics that just show you, okay, how many new people are joining your network over time, and how many people are leaving your network over time. And you can just balance these out in a couple different ways to kind of measure the churn rate of your network, as well as kind of construct a similarity index over time. And what the model was showing me was that the churn rate was increasing. So there was more flux in who was part of your social network. And the similarity index was decreasing with the portals. So again, this is just another way of saying that your social network was changing over time more compared to the counterfactual, which is if the portals had never been introduced. Again, these are very kind of this is a very abstract model, and there's a lot more I need to do that we discussed in terms of making it higher fidelity, which I've already implemented some more stuff in there. But just that alone was pretty surprising to me, because it kind of very much contradicted my qualitative feelings going into this, where I thought it was going to be a negative effect, and in return I was getting a positive effect for these portals on social dynamics. So that was super interesting so far.
Yeah, so for clarification, when you mentioned guild a second ago, is that sort of are you using that loosely to kind of convey a social construct of some sort? Is it more of like a illustration than it's not literal, right?
It's not literal. It's an illustration, but I think it'd be interesting to make it literal at some point if it makes sense for the model. But for now, it's just an illustration.
Yeah, and yeah, it's cool. And it was interesting when you explained the model to me, and we talked about some of the things that could be introduced to increase the fidelity of the model. It got me thinking about the structure of player flow, sort of between the various zones, and the nature of the zones, which then I think we talked a little bit about, like maybe weighting on zones, right? Like adjusting weighting if you've got this zone structure, which could potentially be the literal zone structure, right? Like the actual map may even be one of the easiest ways to do it, because we know so much about that zone map, right? And so it's like, if you've got the zone map, then you can also look at things like, well, where can the books take you relative to where the ports would be anyways, relative to high value targets, right? So is somebody really going to go to the book before they would potentially just get a port that's going to take them a couple or several zones closer to what would be one of the remaining targets there? I thought that was pretty interesting. And then also, looking at whether or not you could really simulate the potential impacts on player churn, or which I think would probably be some guesstimates or whatever, but player churn relative to how much sort of social friction they have prior to the portals and then after, right? Because that was such a big thing when we were talking about the implementation of the portals, was you could log in as a new player on any one of these servers. We weren't forcing you to we didn't funnel everybody to one server. So you had however many servers it was at the time, but it was huge, even with preferred markings. And then you could pick any one of X number of races, which would put you throughout the world. And then on any day, we have X number of new players. So what's the probability that you're going to see another new player coming into this game, which at the time was very new and was being pitched? People are reading articles and seeing Simpsons episodes or whatever, where it's talking about this massively multiplayer online world where you see thousands, you're playing with thousands of other players, because this is before there's a WoW. And then people log in, they're like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to see some other players. And it's ghost town, right? Because everybody at this point they've been spread out over Kunark and Lucklin and Velius. And at that point, did it out of order. But yeah, Lucklin, and then especially with a lot of people, if they're making alts, like Lucklin was such a tempting place to go to with your alt.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, I thought it was interesting because we were like, the idea was just, hey, if I log in and I'm a dwarf and my buddy wants to play a dark elf, should we really have to wait an hour or 2 hours to actually see each other? From the world sense point of view, yeah, because then you respect the world. It's a big world. You had to take a ship to see each other. But from the ability to like really get in and play quickly, which back in those days, more and more we were being pressured to go, how can someone have a meaningful game session of 30 minutes or an hour, let alone their first game session? And yeah. So anyways, lots of stuff in there that it just seems like you could keep adding you could keep adding more, I guess, variables and probably learn even more than just so you're testing this hypothesis, but it feels like it's a model that could be used to figure out some really interesting stuff, which would also then be valuable to games beyond EverQuest, right? Because we're talking about
Yeah.
sort of basic social design and basic world flow and other shit that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's I was reading this book earlier by Kevin Kelly. He's the editor of Wired, right? The co-founder of Wired, and he was saying like these kind of systems, the social systems and complex systems in general, the best way to figure out the output of the system is just to run it and see what happens. And that's why I got interested in computational simulations of economic and social phenomena because like in this case for EverQuest, you were able to run the system once. You implemented, the plane of knowledge, and then you just, saw what happened with all these other confounding factors and variables, going on as well. But I thought, besides just satisfying my own curiosity, I thought, there could be a lot of applications here because it basically gives you the ability to run the system, at a certain level of fidelity multiple times and test different theories and hypotheses and see what the counterfactuals are. I've already made additions since the last time we talked. Like now there's druids and wizards, so there's player classes, and druids and wizards can teleport other people to quest areas. And there's also now mobs. There's like camp locations, and players will go camp. And so we're adding that in because I'm interested in testing this hypothesis now of, you know, I have data now on comparing portals and no portals, but what if there's a third branch of history where instead of the books of knowledge, you kept the druid and wizard roles as being the main teleporter function? What would the social network dynamics look between a future, the branch of history with the plane of knowledge versus the branch of history with the branch of history, with focusing still on druids and
Right.
wizards as the primary teleporters?
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a question in chat. Does this model take into account the geographical distribution of the city zones or other zones?
Yeah, to a certain extent, it does. This is a very what we call like a designed model. It's just very abstract. So I use a synthetic zone creation, which is very simple. I just specify the number of zones I want. And there was an earlier question of what the model was built in or what it runs on. It uses Python. There's the specific technique that this uses is called agent-based modeling, or ABM. And I'll just put that in chat real quick. And there's a library for Python called Mesa, which implements a lot of ABM techniques. So that's what I was using for those who are curious. And in this model, I grow these zones just by saying, I give 10 different seeds across this synthetic grid, and the zones grow until they run into other zones. So I get some kind of geographic distribution, and there's different levels associated. There's level ranges for each zone. So 1 to 10, 11 to 20, blah, 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 blah. And there are also simulated cities as well that players will have to go to stock up on food and water. And I want to make that more high fidelity by, forcing them to sell stuff. I added very, very basic gear distribution across mobs, but no like, vendoring transactions, but that would be pretty important. Um, Thank you, John. Now I'm gonna say it in Jar Jar voice every time
Yeah.
from now on.
That was a hard one not to laugh at. Yeah. Well, and I mean, it is interesting. The the thing we hit on as you're mentioning camps and stuff. It's a shame we don't have the data. And honestly, at the time, it was a very brute force sort of way of getting the data for us as well, even internally. We didn't have great sort of like telemetry or metrics or whatever. And so there's a lot of gathering data in a spreadsheet over certain snapshots of time and kind of looking at it and then doing some best guess. But one of the things that, one of the points of logic there was at that point in the life cycle of the game, first of all, we would look at impacts on different cohorts of players, like what level ranges are being impacted in what way, right? And so when we say it impacted wizards and druids, for example, well, it didn't remove their ability. My assumption is, and this is what we were thinking at the time, it didn't remove their ability to assist low level players because they weren't assisting low level players. There weren't often reasons for them to be in newbie zones or cities in the old world to provide a service. And honestly, a lot of what new players needed was just the basic ability to see other players. So it's first experiential. It was like, I just want to see other players, which having everybody kind of congregating in plane of knowledge provided. And it I guess it renewed that ability to get like buffs that you shouldn't have and shit like that. Because no one was just kind of, if no one's in the city, no one's giving you a buff. You're not really getting that experience either, or getting some hand me downs or selling some bone chips, right? So there's a fair bit of that was missing. And so then if we look at like maybe the next cohort up, sort of like mid-level players, okay, well then the question becomes, so mid-level and above even, what were the preferred targets of opportunity, right? So what would basically be eliminated? And is it something where did that have a big impact on like people that were going to Soul A or Soul B or Gawk? Maybe, but then again, okay, in that case, where are they coming from typically, and would it be easier just to get a port? And is that really holding up at that stage of the game, because there was that tendency for so much of EverQuest content expansion to at some point, this isn't always the case because there are those interesting items that persisted through expansions, but to invalidate previous content, right? So
Mm-hmm.
and that was shit that was already being done with the ports up to Luckland, for example. So to me, it always felt like it was a bit overstated when people would come in. It was one of those things that was easy to remember one way, but having really been there and had some of these conversations behind the scenes and had to being one of the key people pulling the trigger on this, remembered it differently. So I thought it was kind of neat to hear what you've seen so far, like in your analysis. But then also it just kind of made sense. Like once you laid it out and once you said it, it was kind of like, oh yeah, well, yeah, I guess that does make sense, right? Like if more people are
Mm-hmm.
moving around, then more people are going to run into each other and there's more opportunities, social opportunities, or, social dynamics there. So.
Yeah. I remember we talked about that a little before, and I was thinking about it, and but I remember when I was building the model that actually wasn't super intuitive to me. Um, the way I was thinking about it is I'm like, yes, people are moving around using the portals, but there is also this, and maybe it just is more, it affects you more deeply and you remember it more. But there's a lot of accidental or happenstance meetings in the world where I'm a lobby killing the orcs in common lands, and then some high level player would run by and give me a bunch of buffs or hang out and talk and stuff like that. And so when I was building this model, one of the just very simple things I wanted to figure out is, I'm like, is the portal, are the portals like substituting one form of social meeting for another, that has that has that doesn't promote as healthy like social networks? Because is it are people teleporting more, but there's less happenstance meetings where people are just like crossing paths with each other, running over the overworld because they don't have such easy access to teleportation? Um, and I like this way of modeling it because it allows me to strip out a lot of factors and variables and other confounding factors and just boil it down to the simplest elements possible, to try to answer these questions that I have. Because part of the reason why I think that there's a lot of discussion still today about what happened is simply because EverQuest is a very complex system with a long history, with lots of changes that were made. And for me, I think it would have been impossible for me to answer my own question if I didn't try to simulate it this way.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So you've done some work since we last spoke. Do you have kind of like a defined list of things that you would like to continue to add here? And do you have ideas on how you would potentially want to use the model moving forward?
Yeah, I have a few concrete things that I'd like that I could point to, and there's uh, some vagueness here because I have to figure out, like, I could keep working on this thing for a long time, but at a certain point, you can just write the paper on it and ship it out the door to a conference. So I'm probably going to shop this around at some conferences, but like keep working on it. But some features I want to add right now, there's entry of adventurers, but there's no exits. There's no kind of lifespan. There's no potential for, there's not really a churn. It's just people enter, but Hotel California, they check into the simulation, but they can never leave.
Right.
So I'm going to model somehow like that, people cancel subscriptions and drop out of the model altogether. I want to add more sophisticated kind of social value metrics, because, for instance, something I just changed was now for each subgraph or component of the overall graph, you can what levels each adventurer is in each of these partial graphs. So I need to do some. I want to create kind of a metrics dashboard where I can read what's going on and go, okay, there's like more high-level guilds or high-level groups versus low-level groups. Like the variability is increasing or decreasing over time. I think that would be super cool. And then the other major thing I want to add in is high geographical fidelity, because there's Brual's like map files, which has the actual like geographic like polygonal information. So hypothetically, you could have a faithful reproduction of EverQuest maps, and then you could put the model and run it on actual EverQuest maps to really capture a lot more of that geographic diversity. So I want to kind of get, more social value metrics, more geographic fidelity. And social value metrics are super interesting because with the data that I'm already gathering, I can tell you stuff like who's the most connected player, like which player is connected to the most other players. That we call that like the degree of a player, what's the highest degree player in the graph, and who is providing. Once you put in the exit rates, you can try to do some correlation metrics to see, do people exit less if they're around people who are highly connected. So if they're part of a kind of tighter social network, are they less likely to drop out? It's kind of what you were referring to earlier of like the social lifetime, like the value metrics and alternative value metrics. Because I think that's super interesting.
Can I ask on that front? would it seems like there would be value to throw data from both directions maybe at this one, where you've got your simulation and you can continue to increase fidelity on that, and kind of see how tweaking different knobs uh, create different effects or outcomes, I guess. On the flip side, it seems like it's one of those challenges of how do you simulate something that's got so many variables, and then there's a potential to take data that we have, and what I was picturing is like if we were looking at churn rates, and so we're looking at different player levels, different cohorts, and we're seeing, hey, we notice that there's a level that there's X% churn on level at level 5, or between levels 3 and 5, or all of a sudden we've got a fairly steady churn rate, and then level 15 hits and we're seeing an increase in churn. And that maybe is, we drill down, that's specific to a certain race or a certain class or a certain race class combo, right? Because that's an easy one. I put in a quest for that race class combo and it sucks, right? And so they're like, fuck, this reward's no good, right? And they rage quit or whatever. Like, so it's interesting because I'd be curious to see if we are then analyzing that data and then sort of comparing it here and going, okay, what can we learn from what we think we're seeing here? What, how would we tweak this model to align with that, and then possibly learn what we could tweak in real life to improve like those metrics or whatever. Does that make sense? I might be rambling.
No. It's absolutely you absolutely make sense, and I think that's um, definitely part of the power of this approach, because even in this very simple model in its current form, you already have the potential. There's all of the players, all the simulated players have levels, so you can already kind of see, at what level are you more likely to be at a certain degree and in a certain dense level of connection. So you can kind of, even from there, make rough estimates of, if they can just get past this hurdle of like this many levels, then they'll be able to form a kind of like tight-knit social group, and then they're more likely to stay in. And as you make the model more and more high fidelity with different classes, different races, that sort of thing, you can get all these variables going. And then in terms of figuring out what you can tweak, you want to identify the variables of interest that you think might be affecting it. And then what you do is called a parameter sweep or hyperparameter optimization. It's a standard technique in agent-based modeling where you basically take all the variables of interest and then you define a range that you want to test them on, and then you test all possible permutations of the variables. And then you have data reporters in the model that provide model outputs of like, here's the level of connectivity for like these different tranches of levels. And it will show you those tranches and like the associated connectivity levels and like for every single combination or permutation of these variables. So you can go see, this combination of like proximity of starting location to the city, plus like experience gain rates, plus number of other people in the zone, ends up like decreasing the churn rate by like X%. So you can really start getting into those kind of metrics. I think that's answering your question, but let me know if I missed the mark on that.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, because it's all right. Creating this hypothesis of, all right, so if we tweak this, then this should happen. Then actually introducing it into an environment where we know that there are far more variables, right, that we can't account for, but then see if it does have the effect that we were thinking it would have. Right. So yeah, it's now this kind of stuff it's super interesting. It's weird because I straddle like I straddle a weird fence on this one, where I love this type of stuff. On the flip side, I'm also I think I'm by nature very lazy. And that's what has allowed me, and I sucked at school. Like I just didn't enjoy school at all. And so uh I think I've taken both of those things and then justified being lazy and sucking at school by saying, well, and isn't it weird how our intuition, some of us, we're able to figure, like, we can pull the trigger on certain decisions because we can kind of feel this. Like, this is the right
Yep.
move, right? And it kind of, this takes us back to the beginning of the conversation, which is this, this felt off for you based off of just the qualitative sort of vibe that was there. Whereas internally, with very limited data as well, this felt like the right move to make,
Mm.
for us on our end. And a lot of it is a bit of data and a lot of gut, right? It's
Yeah.
rapid cognition or whatever the hell you want to call it this year. So yeah, it's weird for me because I'm like, oh man, I would love to just, that's more data, more simulate, more blah blah blah. But then I've also been in meetings with business intelligence teams and stuff in the past at companies, and they're like, well, if we A/B test this and if we get more data on that, I'm like, fucking just pull the trigger. Just it feels good. Pull the trigger. We're good. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like you can definitely, over optimize it in terms of is simulating, this stuff. And I guess the only thing I would say there is that there's kind of more hypotheses you can generate by running all these A/B tests and the simulations, and that's kind of one value you get out of it. Um, and the other thing that you can get out of it is trying to identify weird emergent properties or behavior of a system that you would not be able to predict ahead of time. You wouldn't be able to solve for it analytically. And A/B testing is just like you can only do so much A/B testing, and it may still not be enough data. As an example, it's like there's a really simple agent-based model that's just about forest fire propagation. And it turns out to be a very nonlinear system. So the only variable in this agent-based model is like the diameter of the tree trunks. So in other words, like how close are the trees spaced out, or how close are they in proximity to each other? And it's like anywhere up to about 40 to 50% of like the maximum proximity between trees. If you start a forest fire at the left edge of the map, it only propagates like 10% of the way through. But if you pass like 50% of the proximity like variable, all of a sudden there's a discontinuity, there's a jump in the system, and a forest fire will now propagate through like 80 to 90% of the forest. So there's nonlinearity in the system. So that's something else I'll just throw out there is like for these complex systems, it's like they can exhibit weird patterns where certain parameter values, certain variable values will completely change, have a huge effect on the output. And that's something that this type of simulation could catch that like even like A/B testing might not be able to grab. But at the end of the day, like I agree with you that it does feel nice to pull the trigger, but I lack the guts to do that, which is why I hide behind my books and make simulations.
No, man, it's super cool. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's been interesting in the industry coming from an era where we desperately wanted data and we really didn't have access to much. And it wasn't that the company was withholding it. I was at a company a bit later than this, probably 7-8 years after the EQ experience. I was at a company where they had a lot of data, but then they didn't, only the owner and his business intelligence minions could see the data because there was a lot of financial data there that, right? Because this is often so intimately tied to finances, especially in like a environment where it's contains microtransactions and stuff. So we would kind of pass the question up through the BI chain, and then we get a cryptic response back. And so we always wanted this data early on, and then now kind of look at the growth and sophistication of the average game company, especially a free to play game company, any company that's running
Hmm.
microtransactions. Um, you know, it's very much a business. Like we describe
Right.
inventory. Like what is the inventory this month? And we're talking about laser blasters and shit that drops and events and all that. That's inventory, right? It's very ew. And ooh, brother. And so uh the thing that's I've noticed is what happens is people get so caught up in the data that there is this sort of this unwillingness to go off of gut, which is odd, right? And there is this, you know, this sort of analysis paralysis or paralysis by analysis, right? When it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, we got to think some more, um, and that can really fuck up a like a medium sized company, right? Like a company that's big enough to maybe have a business intelligence team and have executives that are looking at this and really wanting to make data-based decisions or data-driven decisions. And they start to lose touch with their gut versus a team like our size, right? Or basically a team of our nature, even, where you know I think given the type of people we've attracted on the team and sort of the talent and expertise that we have, we could dig deeper into this. But I also think that our flow has benefited from just constant interaction with the community, you know, playing since day one and building that sort of culture of like, all right, how does this thing work? Well, let's just throw it into the game real quick. Does that feel better?
Yeah.
What's the data telling us? The bit of data that we do pull. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put my cards on the table. Like it's I highly sympathize with your viewpoint from my perspective of someone that really enjoys these types of games, and yet the MMOs that I currently play are Project 1999
Mm.
and Classic World of Warcraft. Um, and the amount of data, business intelligence and quants and whatever has exploded since, those two games were released. And yet I feel like the average quality of the games or MMOs that have been released, recently, well, I can't speak to it objectively, but I just have not been interested. It's like,
Which is
there's
your
these
right.
huge businesses now,
You're
right?
allowed to
Which is
not be interested.
Yeah, I'm not interested. This, like, honestly, what you guys are doing with Monsters of Memories is like the first new game, an MMO that's really caught my attention and drawn me back in. And you're small indie company that's not using that doesn't have one of these like big data, business intelligence like hubs or whatever. And you
We
guys are
appreciate that.
kind of, yeah, shooting more from the hip, and that really drew me in. So maybe I'm undermining my own position here as a quant, but I can understand your position, and it certainly has been working for me.
Well, I think, you know, I don't think it undermines it because we are, I mean, you know, sometimes we're silly on streams, especially me. I tend to be like, that, that's my role is just to come out here and be silly a bit and hopefully answer a few questions. Occasionally work, but mostly show other people's work. But like behind the scenes, we, we have I believe we've got a pretty healthy respect for any tool that can give us an advantage, right? And
Yeah.
we do a lot of kind of discussing, looking at things occasionally. So, you know, for example, like project management. Uh, every month or every couple of months, we'll get on this kick where we're like, oh, we need to refine our project management approach. We need to, you know, we've got to be a little more structured here or there, right? And we'll try something out, and then if it doesn't stick, when it doesn't stick, we're like, okay, but our flow's working for us, right? And so
Hmm.
we, you know, but even little things like we put before I go much further, folks that are asking questions in chat, I'll show up in a minute and we can grab some of those as well. But like even early on, we put in we're logging player behaviors. We got a nice database that's got, we're tracking, we're logging a lot of stuff. Now, excuse me, we just got someone on the team, hi Callum, that may help us surface that better and create better dashboards and tools for us to look at that. But early on, it was one of those things that when we were talking about it, we're like, let's get this tracking in so that we've got that data so that we can, analyze that when we need to. Things like putting a /bug reporting tool in that's actually got you have the ability to pick categories, subcategories, and have that really help us out on the back end when it goes into a database. We've got that data, right? Like, and so we're thinking about um, these tools and the ability to potentially have them, but I think we'll always use that as a data point, right? It's like, how do you keep your finger on the pulse of the community within Discord, within playtests, within, checking around some of
Yeah.
the forums where they're shitting on us or whatever. It's like, all right, so those are data points. The team, I think, does a really good job of just, they're in Discord because they're having a natural conversation with other people like themselves who just happen to be talking about the thing that we're working on, right? And I think it's helping to keep that, it's sort of that empathetic link with the community as
Right.
well. And it's like, okay, it's one of the things that's come up where it's like, hey, could we moderate? I'd like to help you by moderating the forum. It's like, but if we had moderators or if we had a community, if we had like a community manager or something, then the community's opinions would be going through you and coming to us, and our opinions would be going through you and going to them. That's weird.
Right.
No, that's telephone. Like, we'd rather just like sort of like sit in, we're gonna like sit in the hot tub with you guys, right? We don't need someone. That's a weird analogy, but you know what I mean. And so, yeah, because there's a lot of nuance there, and so I do think the stuff that you're making, like if you continue to flesh this out and you've got some really cool shit going on there, for sure, I'd be interested in seeing what you're doing and seeing if there's something that we could leverage there. We want to be the most like punk rock, unsophisticated looking, sophisticated people that we
Oh
could
yeah,
possibly be.
absolutely.
It's all an act. We're a well-oiled, highly sophisticated corporate fucking machine behind the scenes. Don't you guys think otherwise? All right, so there's some questions that we missed, and I should probably shut up and see if you want to grab some of these.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, um, like the direct engagement with the community and everything like that. And someone also talked about like how passionate this project is, and it's a lot of evidence for this. I just love seeing all these questions here. I don't know, it just has a different feel to a lot of other games that communities that I've tried. Let me see. There were some long ones. I'll see if I can pull something out. Trooper was saying, I like that idea of a defined city hub for a certain period of time in an online game world. Maybe you need to access the new city and get a gate there. It's only connected to local teleport paths. I guess I think there's a few questions that are like that of like, what about this? What about that? These hypotheticals. And I guess I'll just say that's why I kind of like this simulation approach is, it allows you to try these counterfactuals of what if we designed it in a completely different way? Let's, tweak this transportation route over here, blah, 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 and then see what the effects are. So there's a lot of cool suggestions that you guys threw out there that, this technology is well suited to simulating and trying ahead of time. But again, could lead to paralysis, analysis paralysis, like Sean was saying. Let's see. Yeah, Sean, do you see anything interesting that you want me to take a look at? I'm still scrolling. I haven't presented this experiment yet at an academic conference because I am kind of abdicating. I'm abdicating I'm not being a good economist by writing this paper because it's not really an economics paper. I'll be honest. And this is more of a game design paper than anything else. And so I have to shop it at game design conferences, which I'm not super familiar with. So I have to figure out that kind of game and what a good venue is for the paper. So I haven't presented it yet. So you guys are the first people I'm really field testing it on.
Right on. Earlier, Mondas17 asked, said, super interesting, then asked, has ABM been considered as a design tool for games/MMOs? Could be really useful to plan out how to expand the world while maintaining certain desired player mechanics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've talked about this, a bit now. It allows you to test these counterfactuals, and I like it because for me, it's kind of presents a nice narrative and a visual. Like you can't see it, but if you like go check out the paper when I make it available, you can actually see like the grid and like the players move around on the grid. So you can see these like visual patterns pop up of where players are going and this or that. So it's I think it's a nice tool for analysis, but also for storytelling. It allows you to kind of try to identify the key drivers of what are driving patterns you've noticed in your game or other type of phenomena. And but it looks like the chat has been taken over by hot tub and bathhouse discussions, which
which is natural.
I didn't write about that. I didn't write about that in my paper, but maybe I should add a section.
The impact of bathhouses. I mean, we've got one so far in game, so it's something that we can definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like, maybe what I should do is I need to get this. I need to get this. I need to make this paper and the code like open source here. And if there are any questions we didn't get to, I'm going to post a link to the paper and everything else in Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always hit me up on Discord. I'd be happy to answer any questions in DMs or anything like that as well.
Cool. Nicodemus asks, as an economist who has played M&M, what are your thoughts on the in-game economy? Any suggestions you can make? Things we should consider in design?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I'll be honest. Like my in-game experience so far has been making like 9 or 10 different characters, getting into level 2, and like barely getting enough copper to buy my first spell, and then dying immediately to something, and then trying a new class. So I haven't really like got an in-depth look at how the economy works. But one interesting thing is, yeah, someone said aggressively ban RMT, like real monetary transactions. And I'll say one interesting thing, which is that you can do everything you can to ban RMT, but there's a professor I know who basically had an impossibility result, which shows that in-game video game economies can never be completely closed, which means like you cannot insulate in-game currency from outside currency. There's always channels, like directly or indirectly. People spend more time in game generating more currency, which has an inflationary effect, and they may be having that inflationary effect because they are receiving monetary compensation from outside the game environments. Like in the severe case, that would be gold farming, but there's a lot less severe cases of that. But someone had asked him basically, this professor, like, can we lock down our in-game economy so there's no real-world monetary effect at all? And it's theoretically, it's logically impossible, which I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it more realistically, it's about looking at level of disruption, defining thresholds that are considered disruptive, and then maintaining that, right? Like diligently maintaining that. And it seems like nobody's immune from it, but there are. I mean, even I worked on 2 games back. I worked on a game that again most people have never ever heard of, but people were making really good cash on just RMT with in dealing with that game, there were also people making really good cash selling hacks for that game. Oddly enough, it was a tiny game, so nobody's immune. Let's see. The Irate Turk asks, do you feel that making the design into a scientific endeavor versus trying to do something that feels right risks stifling the creative process, not just analysis process, but other issues? Who is that aimed at? Is that... I have an answer. But I'm also curious. I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that? Before
Yeah. I guess I think you can go too far with the kind of theory crafting and the data gathering. But in my opinion, it can also be used creatively. And maybe this is just me being too idealistic, but why this type of approach interests me is because I can envision all these possible different ways of designing something or different scenarios. And then I can actually just simulate them and try it and see if there's a vastly different effect versus, what we're actually doing. So it's kind of for me, it's a tool to be um, creative with systems. I can change things about the system at either a minor level or a major level and see what the effects are. And if I was in a game design context, I would use that to, if someone had an idea that affected the game at a systems level, like a new transportation route or a new economic setup or something like that, it would allow me to play around with it and see what kind of effects it has. And for me, that's creative, but it's something I'm interested in. So I definitely understand if others could feel like it could become stifling, and I would never want the tool to be used to get into this analysis paralysis situation where we're just modeling all the time. You don't actually pull the trigger on one of these histories.
Yeah, and I think from the design perspective, there's always going to be, at least for me, I don't know, maybe I'll grow out of it one of these decades, but there's that bit of like territorial sort of like, hey, I'm designing this thing, so this person with their data comes in and tells me, well, you're doing it wrong. It's like, oh shit, but I really want to do this. I've got this emotional tie to it, even if I can't necessarily articulate why, right? And I think there are plenty of opportunities where in that case I would be wrong, and there are potential opportunities for the person coming in and with the data, maybe they're missing something. I think the bigger thing when it comes to sort of art versus science that we have to look at is, and we discuss this a fair amount because we have a lot of hindsight for the type of game that we're making. We have a lot of hindsight, and in theory, if we're to just sort of generalize the experience by describing it as like a curve or something, we could make a pretty smooth curve, right? Like in the experience, we can make a relatively well-designed experience. And I think one of the problems that games have run into, especially as the tools have gotten better, the insight has become better. There's more to reference. And just sort of the level of sophistication of the average designer has gotten better. We've polished the interesting out, right? Like it's kind of like it's kind of like going on a date with a really pretty girl and discovering she's the least interesting person you could be sitting at the table with. And it's a weird experience, right? Because it's like, and I'm just speaking from my perspective. You guys can go on dates with whatever you want. But the when that moment occurs, it's like, oh shit, this person should be exciting. This should be an exciting moment right now. But I am bored shitless, and this is not going to happen. And so I think what's happened with some games is they're too good. They're too well designed. And Discord and forums for until the end of my days as working in games will be sure to let me and others know that is bad design. That is not respecting my time. That is a slap in the face. That is a this, that is a that, right? And it's like, this is just this is not a good idea, right? Like, I like all this other shit, but this thing that they're including, this feature, this that, it's not good. And I'm not saying that they're always wrong, but I do think what winds up happening is, again, it's there's something about leaving the little sharp metal bits every once in a while. That little bit of like that little bit of like danger, that element of surprise. And you know, it, other people have written about this. I'll never write a book, you know, unless it's just about weird shit that's happened to me while out partying and hanging out with the homies or whatever. It won't be a game design book. But like the when you recognize the pattern, especially in an environment where you're like, I want to play this for years, right? Like EverQuest is still going. And so I want to play this for 20 years. I want to play this for 30 years. If all of a sudden but you can see the curve. I know exactly how this is going to play out for the next 20 years, 25 years. The thing is, at that point, you've really got to like it. Like, you've really got to like that experience. And I think for a lot of people, you know, or at least speaking for myself, I want to be surprised, right? Like, I don't, once the television series has got a predictable plot, I'm like, oh, fuck, you know, like, or once a relationship of some sort is ultra predictable, it's boring. And we are, you know, we have a relationship with the community. So it's like the thing we want, you know, every once in a while, you want me to charge into the room wearing only a pantser outfit, right? Like, you're like, I did not see that coming, but hey, it is Valentine's Day, right? Like, every once in a while, you want unpredictable. And oh, I say you, I shouldn't say that, but you agreed. I want unpredictable. I want a little surprise. I want my day to go differently. I want to, you know, I want to have a new experience. And my concern with being too data focused or too heavy on the science instead of the art side is not finding where you can leverage one to do things. Like, I think you leverage science to make things intentionally from your end as a creator. So we can use it to make sure we nail the intentionality, but our intention should be to build in mystery and surprise and all that other shit. So there are conversations we have where it's like, hey, cool, we could do this, but how do we add in jank? Right? Like, how do we actually add jank into the system? Yeah, anyway, so that's a ramble there. That's a rant, but I see it with regards to, it's not just the data that you're doing, but even project management, right? Like, you know, let's quantify, is this a type A quest, a type B quest, or a type C quest? Every type C quest has 3 objectives. Each objective should take 15 minutes. Their reward should be 12% of the experience you need to get to the next level. And you can systematize the shit out of stuff. And a lot of companies do. And then it feels horrible. Okay, sorry.
No, I really like that that topic, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. It actually reminded me, I was like reading this it's pretty different field, but it's drawing. But I have this really old book on like it's a drawing and perspectives book. It's by John Ruskin, and it was written in like 1907. And he was saying
that is a pretty
he's
book.
giving an example. Yeah, he's giving an example of like 2 curves. And I don't know if you can see, but he's saying like the first curve on the left here is a bad curve because it's too predictable because it's part of his circle. But this other curve is beautiful because it has variation. It's not monotonous. It has roughness. It has changes in the curve. It flattens out a bit, and then he said that's more interesting. But it's like, this is a book on perfecting your drawing by being purposefully not too perfect. You know, that's the art. You can't be too scientific with drawing or it becomes monotonous, exactly like you were saying. And I love those parts of the games where it's just kind of unexpected. Like, as example, drawing from this game, from Monsters and Memories, where my family and I um, were part of the play test, or the stress test last weekend.
Mhm.
It was amazing. And so it was me, my parents, and my uncle. And just for this question reminded me of it in chat. We're wandering around the city, like trying to figure out our spells and stuff like that. And then my uncle, who's this, ogre elementalist named Chomp Chomp, like dies. And he's like, guys, hey, I'm dead. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know where my body is. So we spent like the next hour or two trying to find his corpse. And he like died by the docks under these like red tarps. And it's like completely unexpected. We were like, oh my God, like how are we gonna get him out of there? And then we finally like get his body back. And we're going out and we're trying to like get going again. And Chomp Chomp's like, hey, I'll be right back, guys. He goes in to get something else because he like forgot something his trainer. He wanders in the same spot again. He couldn't see it because it's dark. It's nighttime. He dies again. It's like, guys, I died again. And it's like this whole drama of like, like 4 or 5 hours, like trying to recover his corpse. But yeah, I guess that's the spot right there. But it was super cool um, because it's just like so unexpected to have a dangerous area like that in the city, and we all loved it at the end of it. So, but anyway, R.I.P. Chomp Chomp, great illustration, I think, of this roughness that we love. And if anyone sees Chomp Chomp next time, tell them to stay away from the docks.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rip Chop Chop. Yeah. The we definitely have some bodies that wound up here. And I was talking to somebody. I was talking to Hamad about this morning, actually, but we were laughing about it because the population in here is very placeholder, but it's so it'll definitely be refined. We'll work through some story hooks and really design this out. But I put in a quick sort of placeholder population here, but it's just all KOS. Right. And so you go in here, and if you were to sneak in or somehow get in and look around, you would see some flavor. There's river pirates down there and strange, right. Different drunkards and all sorts of shit, like drunken clerics and stuff. So it's a rough part of town. And so I was curious because when people come here, they walk, because a lot of people are like, I'm not giving it all away. It's going to change, Thulon. I'm telling you with the placeholder stuff that's in here, but it's going to be way better. We're actually going to design it out soon. There's this row of guards. If you're approaching this area, you will see more guards in one place than you've ever seen in Night Harbor. And so I was like, I mean, we've got guards up here. If you come down here, you're like, oh, there's 4 guards right along the wall here. There's 2 guards right here, and then 2 guards facing inwards. And then if you were to come down here, there's like 3 more guards looking this way. And the original idea was like, all right, so if people start training shit out of here once they're appropriate level, maybe the guards can help clean it up before these ruffians get pulled into the city. But the other thing I was thinking is, I'm curious how many people will walk up here, look at all these guards and go, what was the consider key again? Which button do I push? Because I see some people standing in here. Maybe I should consider before I go further in. And sure enough, it'd be a dead giveaway. But I did find a way to, just a pro tip for the next play test before this is done. There is a way to basically aggro these guys at range for the pile of corpses that's here. Aggro them at range, pull them straight into the 53 guards that are standing here, run for a second, and then go in. Zukin said, I think part of the problem is sometimes the NPCs aren't loading, so they don't even see anything when they wander in there. Oh, yeah, it could have also this time just been a lag thing. But I do think that, I do think it's okay every once in a while to just blame the player. I think that's how we bond.
I wonder, it kind of goes back to your point earlier of like, like churn rates based on like the level range and even like the player class and race. And so part of me was curious when this happened. I'm like, are like ogre players and like other big race players just like less likely to consider before they charge in or something like that? Is that a characteristic that's present, for different classes or different races? Like maybe ogres are just so tall they just feel it's like driving a big truck, right? You just like, I'm invincible, so I'm not going to pay as much attention. Maybe that's a poor analogy, but
No, I
you're
think it's
riding
a
so
good one.
tall as an ogre. Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if there's psychological impact of different player race size and things like that, right? Like where a gnome or a goblin's always kind of like, I'm gonna check. Um, it's
Exactly.
Longilla said maybe have the guards say something to players when they walk by. So it's interesting because there's two pale guards here that actually do say something if you're paying attention to chat, but you have to pay attention to chat. And they basically say something along the lines of, stay away, do not come any closer. And then there's a pile of corpses right here. Right under their feet, there's a pile of newbie corpses. And it's so fun to just stand here and watch. Like, I can just be invisible and just stand here. And you'll see someone come up and they'll go, there's a lot of corpses right here. Do 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 do. Whack. And so
Right.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, man. So I think looking at that, we could probably generate heat maps and figure some things out,
Yeah.
right? And apply that, and potentially feed that into your data, or we can use it sort of as a different vector using the data that you mentioned. But yeah, dude, I love it. It's so much fun, right? Because it is a thing where someone like you comes along and you could find that the methodology that you're using or the tooling that you're creating is something that next thing you know, game companies are like, shit, this is actually super handy, and all we need you to do is add in this variable or that variable, right? Like, or hey, we've got all
Right.
this data that you could feed in and go to town and stuff. So I would say, if this is something that I'm sure you've got other stuff to do in your fancy schooling, but if this is something that continues to sort of hold your interest and you're looking for ways to like communicate that to, um, or like if you have the question of like, who do I talk to, or how do I reach out to a company or whatever? Uh,
Yeah.
always hit me up because it's, I mean, we do this with everything. It's one of the reasons why when people ask us about our tech stack, we tell them in detail what tech stack we're using. Like, how does your networking
Right.
work? Ollie will go on and tell you everything, right? Like, we're not gonna go open source, but we are blabbermouths, right? And we don't believe in like that. What we're doing is like a zero sum game. We're like, okay, we'll tell you how we're doing it. You can do that with your game as well, right? Like, we don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be happy to put you in contact with anybody you can think of. And, if you're having trouble trying to think of shit, like, I don't know how to help you submit something to GDC or whatever, because I've never done it, but I know people that have, and, happy to put you in touch.
I mean, dude, it's super gracious of you, super amazing. I'm happy just coming on stream and getting to talk about games with y'all, like such a passionate community. From my own perspective, never expected to be here just on the whim of some semester project. So this is already like, pretty awesome for me. I'm super stoked about the we got going on here. We love the game. We love your punk rock approach to game development, and I definitely interested enough that I'm going to keep working on this, and I'll definitely keep in touch. Um, and yeah, I appreciate it once again, and I'll put a link to this stuff, my paper and stuff, on Discord if anyone's interested.
Cool. And, keep an eye out. Look for, I mean, you'll be able to see it, but your cottager in our Discord as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, Cottager, and then Mulberry Cottager in Twitch chat because I felt like my name didn't have enough syllables in it.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
All right,
So,
man.
yeah, thanks for hopping on. Thanks for being brave and hopping on with these guys, but everybody's super nice all the time. I mean, you see that in Discord. And yeah, if you hit a point where you've got some new revelations or you got something else you want to show or whatever, just hit me up and, yeah, I'll happily bring you back on. I like hanging out, and talking to folks, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. I'll definitely be back, and I'll hang around. I'll be around in the chat too, and happy to answer any questions and DMs, stuff like that. But thanks once again, and good luck with the developments. And we'll be playing every chance we get. Thanks so much, Sean.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And hey, be sure to thank your family for us as well. That it was super cool to hear that it was all of you playing together. So
Yeah. Well, I'll thank them for me, and I'll let my uncle know as soon as he finds his second body or whatever. I think he's still got a body to find next time.
chop chop.
Yeah, chomp chomp. But yeah, thanks, Sean, and I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
See you in Discord. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
And let me switch scenes. Cool. All right. We did it. Let me in Discord now. I think that ended the call. All right. I'm a pro. I'm pro at this. Cool. All right. That was awesome. Let me turn the volume back down before I turn the music back on. All right. Okay. What was set up here before? I was missing some stuff. MD Wall Street said, "Yo, those two guards smoked my buddy during the playtest." LOL. Yeah. Some people definitely got killed. We'll look at that. So on one hand, we do want to make it so that just so like fictionally and stuff, it feels better. Like it would be nice for you to get the warning. Just randomly killing over dead isn't necessarily fun, but we don't want to get rid of the idea that you could kill over dead if you're just not paying attention, right? Like Night Harbor will be a city filled with delights and surprises, and the surprise may be you looking at your corpse for a second before respawning every once in a while. So keep your eyes open. We want you to be comfortable and running around city and learn it and all that, but we don't want you to get too comfortable, right? Like it's midnight and it's all full moons. Something may happen. Night Harbor Catacombs win. Goblin Town. We've got we'll hit on some stuff. We've got a lot of world to build, but there is still some more of Night Harbor to do as well. So Tupac, I missed responding to you on that earlier. But Tupac asked again, the whole conversation begs the question, does Eminem have a topology map that allows them to see players in real time moving around the map to gather data on the social flow of the game to help find the pain points or bottlenecks? I don't know if real time would help us as much as heat mapping, and I don't know if we currently have the ability to do heat mapping, or if honestly I'm such a Luddite. I don't know how we would store that data, but maybe our tech guys would know. Is that Divivern? Divivern. Because it's like Wyvern, only different. Asked, do you know when we would expect to see more of Dwivern? Perfect, Dwivern. Or playtest deep races, other races not currently available. So, unfortunately for you guys that are looking forward to some of the other races, you'll have to wait on those unless something just happens. You never know with our crew. Like, you could wake up one day and like Zukin has made all the other races. But we're currently planning on releasing more of the races as we're hitting those areas. So as we get closer to early access launch in 2025, working towards the beginning of the year 2026 launch for early access, we'll already be starting on our first major update after launch, which would be, it's going to be deep focused, deep elves, deep elf city. It's going to be you know, our first big module, Into the Deep, or Descent into the Deep, or something along those lines. I forget what we wrote up. And then you'll see more of that come online. So, let's see. Yeah, I'm glad you guys liked the interview. I think it was really cool. It was one of those things where it's like, why not? Why, you know, we've got cool people in the community, and I think every once in a while it'd be nice to have conversations. Every once in a while, when someone's being a complete asshole to me on the YouTube comments, and I say that because it is to me, because it's on a video that, like, this video could potentially have somebody busting my balls. Like, every once in a while, I'm kind of like, I'm tempted to be like, some of those people I'd be interested to also have on and be like, hey, why don't you hop on and we'll talk? Because that would be interesting as well. But this was a pleasant engagement, so it was really cool to be able to have the opportunity to discuss the model, and, you know, have the opportunity for you guys to sort of see the thing that I got to see when we were talking to DMs. By the way, Nordberg 808, Corvush, bad credit. Thank you for the follows. I think that's turned off when I'm doing interviews. Funky Sharky interview next week. That would be awesome. Funky Sharky turned out to be pretty cool, though. I mean, ultimately, maybe not, but he seemed cool for a bit. Mondis asks, I'm curious if M&M has plans for expansion with new zones without leaving behind ghost towns. Kind of the core issue that POC tried to solve. Pretty far future consideration. Our goal is really to add more depth to the existing world in interesting ways as a means of expanding. Right, so we have a map, and it's something that's being refined right now, and it's going to be an interesting set of discussions in the next couple of weeks with the team about sort of refining our target of what is version 1.0 of the game, because that's the question you guys have and will have, right? Which is, how long will we be in early access? What are we working toward? And so we've got an idea. We have an existing idea. But I think there's some scope refinements, reduction in scope in certain areas. Unlike other projects, we try to find areas where we can reduce scope beforehand, and then you know, sort of plan for, all right, if we're reducing this, are we throwing it away, or are we putting it, is it going to be part of the later live game or whatever? So anyway, long story short, to answer your question, we're doing a number of things with systems that are encouraging the use of cities long term. Even something as silly as like having to take the certain items to the right vendor to get full price. One of the reasons why we're doing that is because you're not going to find all these vendors everywhere in the world. Right? So, that creates an opportunity for the gameplay that you're seeing already with regards to the people that are playing the arbitrage game. I think Chinny D probably was the one that made that sort of the most apparent or obvious or whatever, like made it famous in one of his early videos by just basically going, hey, I can buy this at this guy for this price, take it right across the street, which no one's doing for some reason, sell it and make a profit, and run back and forth, and all of a sudden have enough money to pay for my guild before people can even find the guild registrar, right? So like the activity there, that sort of like moving it from here to there, well, we can extend that, and we've even talked about like, all right, so what's the next place that you could potentially see that, especially once you have things like pack animals in, right? So I can load up my donkey with a shitload of stuff from the sneakiest, you know, like we've got the shifty Ashira or something, and loaded stuff up there and make a profit by taking it into town, or buy stuff from players at the, you know, zone line, load it up, throw it on my pack animal, take it to town, right? So people that enjoy that type of gameplay can actually provide a service to the community, and it's doing two things. It's reinforcing the social value of different player types and encouraging social friction, but it's also the maintenance of the town as, or the towns or city as a place that remains a hub. But then ultimately, I think what you're asking about is, are we going to throw out another continent with everything that you need there, and then everybody's going to go there? No, that's not the plan. The plan is to, once we hit 1.0, we've got ideas for zones even within this region. I would say we have over half a dozen different zones just in this one region that we would love to be able to unlock over time. And some of them are islands out there, which you would go, this would still be a hub. Some of them are deeper under places you've already been. So that type of stuff. We want to make the world deeper and deeper and deeper, literally. Let's see. UK Rads asks, says, had a great time with the playtest. However, it seemed Night Harbor consistently had lag issues that never resolved. There's a lot of XP camps in the city beyond the newbie zone that simply couldn't be used due to it. Has there been consideration of breaking the city up into 2 zones? How confident is the team with regards to alleviating lag in the city? So we have discussed it. And I think we, on the design side, are pretty comfortable with the idea. There'd be some slight tweaks here and there, maybe in the art, some layout modifications or whatever. If we hit a point where we felt that it would be better for tech to split up the zone, we could split up the zone into 2 or even more zones, right? Like something, if we really had to, we could even take something like this district over here, the Bins, and make it a zone, right? And so it's easy enough for us to do. Ollie's pretty confident that we don't need to do that, and some of the issues that you were seeing, like the lag that you're seeing, weren't related to that specifically. We have some changes that we've made over the last 6 months that have put some gremlins in the mix, if I'm going to say it in that way because I can't speak to it eloquently. Our tech guys are working to solve some of that. I think part of it was some network traffic issues with some things that we had introduced. Maybe it was SOI. If one of the tech guys is in here that can speak to it in a more concise way, I'll read it out. So far we're not super worried about it. But like I said, we definitely have fallback plans, right? It's easy enough to turn this into district and make them zones. And if we're not bound on the server at this point, it's not a server issue. It really has been, we're seeing issues within the zone based off something else. I'll just say else. If we felt that we hit a point where it's like, oh, we have problems if we ever have more than 150 people in a zone, well, that's something we got to solve anyways. But then we would say, should we leave this 150 or should we divide it into 4 parts and make it 600? Sure. Easy peasy. Zoidberg asks, it's been a while since I joined, but dang, Night Harbor's pretty dang big now. Any concern about city being too spread out? No, because we're just going to continue to stuff it with content, and you've got to also realize there's a shitload of player housing marked out in here. There's probably 400 to 500 different housing units at the moment. We may reduce that if we start using it more and more for content, or we could add to it in different ways in terms of the housing unit. Keep in mind that this is still very much in development. I actually had some really great conversations the last 2 days with Hamad about basically getting some more stuff written up to help us easily flesh out the city more with content. We want this to be a city where you can actually not only level 1 to 60 within the city, but find yourself aligning with you know, different factions. We've got 3 major factions that play within the city already, and then we'll have like one-off factions and stuff as well. So it's not overly ambitious, it's just work. Quink says, hi Sean, I know you all aren't currently looking to expand the team, but I'm curious what kind of roles you might bring on in the future, maybe like as a wish list. For us, art production capacity is always going to be kind of our long leg. It takes time to make art. So, you know, one of these days in the future, we may be looking for experience, and that's always the bummer, because we've had some really awesome people reach out to us that are still early in their career or doing this on the side and wanting to build up a skill set for different types of art. And like, we're honored anytime somebody's willing to like hit us up, just because that means you like us and you believe in us, and so thank you for that. But we more and more we're adding industry folks to the team, and because it's hard for us to manage people and kind of help them grow and learn, which is unfair to them, without putting in too much sort of like leadership structure in the team as well. So we really do want to like get in people that are experienced, that can work pretty autonomously. We just in the last couple of months we added a experienced 3D artist from Poland named Mike. He's just getting back from his honeymoon, but he's been working on Veil of Zintar with us. We've added experienced systems designer who's got about 11 years on EQ2 and some EQ. Jason, he's on the team now. We've got a animator who's a more senior industry animator, Jimmy, who's come on the team, who currently works at a company that you guys I'm sure know the name of, but I'm not going to say. Different genre of game, but very, you know, so we've been very fortunate to be able to bring that experience onto the team now, and I say that not just as like humble brag or whatever, but it is to also reassure you guys that as we're adding people, it's folks that are going to really help us deliver on what we've been promising. So that Steven guy says, I was watching Tangent streaming this the other day. Looked great. Yeah, it's awesome that he made it in. It was super cool that he got in, and like, I know him from when I first started getting back into EQ, even like in 2020. I think I was watching when I was playing on Aerodune before this was even a thing. I think I was watching like some Tangent streams, you know, even back then, and seeing him. I think he was trying to get either kill Lucan or get someone to help him kill Lucan so he could, you know, basically quest beyond his levels at the time. He was pretty low level, but anyways, awesome dude. We're really excited that he had fun and exposed the game to more people. So that's super cool. Do you get to be a carpenter? Elron's excited about the idea of furniture and stuff. I loved being a carpenter in EQ2, so we'll see what we can potentially pull off there. Flintlock says, oh my god, sounds so awesome to level 160 in a city. My Lankmar Waterdeep. I always screw this name up. I read it, but I'm so bad at just saying it. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Minnows, Burrant. Anyways, Dark Elf City. Lifestyle fantasy is going to actually be possible. Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope. Any chance trade skills are more robust than EQ, more robust like EQ2? We'll have to see. It's going to be. We hate like overpromise. Yeah, and it's going to do this shit, and it's going to do that shit, and it's going to be for everybody. And it's like, we're Minzo Baranzan. You know, First is sitting out there laughing at me right now. It rolls off his tongue. We've said this name behind the scenes so many times when we're talking about Deep Elves. Minzo Baranzan. Minzos. The Minzos. The fresh makeup. Oh no, that's Mentos. So anyways, the team's laughing at me. But thank you, Lasava. for the assist. Let's see. So we don't want to overpromise. If we think that we can pull it off and the team's, hyped on it, then we'll try something that's a little more detailed on trade skill side. When you guys talk about like the future of what's the future of M&M, like, hey, if you guys are working through early access and you guys have your shit together and people don't churn crazy, like, you don't have 99% churn after a week and you've got a decent number of people playing the game, what do you guys plan on doing? Well, we want to finish the game. We want to hit 1.0. And we want to, we're going to have a very clear idea of what that means for us, right? I think one of the things that benefits us is like just being very clear about this is our target. Even if we're kind of, crazy gnomes on how we get to that target. And then, if you were to ask me, like, in your dream world, if everything goes well, what would you do with the game? Well, I think at other companies I've been at, when things go really well, what they do is they take all the money from the game and they start making a bunch of other games and forgetting how they made the first game, and they don't invest in the flagship game. If we do really well, invariably there are a couple other games that we'd love to make in the future because we'd like to be a company that makes weird ass games. That's why there's a S in our name, like Niche Worlds Cult. But the one thing that we want to always do is take M&M and reinvest in it and go, hey, you know what? We could probably make trade skills cooler. All right, let's just redo trade skills and make them even better. Hey, it would be cool if we had 50 more unique faces for the various player characters. Hey, it would be really nice to add another dungeon in this region, or have another, player race, or, invest in this cool system that makes the game very replayable, right? So, yeah, that's like my fantasy is like, wouldn't it be cool to have this game that we continue to improve, and not in the way where we do something like completely change the art style of all the player character models and then you quit and sell your account on eBay. Investing on long-term viability of live service games. Oh, interesting. Yeah, weird. Not letting your flagship sink. So odd. But honestly, I think we've learned a lot by looking at P99, and we've learned a lot by looking at EQTLP. And I think even obviously big players have learned that as well, right? Like the Blizzards out there. Achromatic asks, any internal discussion pop up from last weekend about reintroducing some commands to help with getting stuck in the world geometry during future playtest periods? I hit a couple of situations where rewind was not sufficient. Nothing's popped up so far. I'm very curious to see what we're thinking on that. If we're thinking it's maybe better for us to get you a better way to communicate with us so that we can ensure that we're getting data on where that was used. Then again, maybe we just need better logging on where, rewind or something similar is used so that we can kind of look for hotspots there. But no, Achromatics, nothing's come up yet. That may be a good thing for us to look at before our future playtest, but I don't know how widespread that sentiment is. In the gaming industry, is network engineering more network programmers, not traditional networking? I wanted to look into the game area as a network engineer. Octowisp, I can't answer your question very well, but that's one of those things where if you hit us up in Discord, we could probably answer that better for you. We can get you, I can put you in touch with somebody that can do a better job of answering your question, if that makes sense. Let's see. Let's see. When I say what other games, I mean like conceptually or genre. You should ask Nick. You should ask Nick. Nick has a he has a passion He has a burning desire. So one of these days, it would be amazing to. I don't know. I don't know if anything about Nick in Discord could potentially give away what he's in his passion is. Then again, if you watch the stream, you should know. Trivia question. How did Nick and I meet? What was he actually looking for? And that'll answer that question. Darius said Shadowrun MMO. Do you know that Variant, once they had it, and it was still Variant at the time, Variant had an official game pitch process. And it was a form that you filled out. And so you had to fill out your pitch and submit it. And then it got like submitted to like Brad and some other people, and they would look at the pitches. And from the first like days that I got there, I don't know how long it was before after I got there that I learned about the pitch process, and I don't know what the cycle was. But from basically the first moment I got to Variant, I pitched Shadowrun MMO. And I pitched it every year for like 5 years. And it got to the point where later on when I was working with pitch teams, because the process changed, basically it became you needed to have a producer to back you, and you had to have a team, and then you had to do a prototype or whatever. I submitted basically EQ Shadowrun so many times that it became an internal joke within upper management, and they called it Sean's Shadowrun game. And it never happened. But that specifically is not what Nick was into. Remember that Shadowrun shooter, one of the best balanced shooters in your opinion? Injury to All, yeah, it was the Microsoft Shadowrun game. And I was so like, when I saw the announcement, I was like, is that, oh my god, are they making an MMO? Because everybody's making MMOs then. And it wound up just being a shooter, but Dead Zergling CD4, which makes me think of CB4, which was an excellent movie. Thank you for the follows. Wasn't Shadowrun the first cross-platform game also? Oh, I don't know. It might have been. Man, remember Shadowrun on the Genesis? Is one of the future games imminent mobile? Why, do you have a phone? Yeah, Shadowrun on Genesis was kind of a big deal. Nicodemus said, guessing Nick asked you to help with something PlanetSide related. Yeah, I was doing like a EQ streams in 2020, and Nick came in and was like, hey, do you know any of the PlanetSide guys? Can you have those guys on for an interview? Still need to do that. Yeah. Sean, keep it on the down low, but when's the next test? Because I'm a scrub and missed the last one. Earlier today, in the stream, I think someone may have mentioned, or maybe it was Discord. No, I think Nick was mentioning on Discord. We have made some of the tech changes that we were wanting to make. So for those of you that don't know, when we went into this playtest weekend, we knew we had some tech issues that were going to lead to a bit of that like lag feeling or that rubber banding feeling. So we knew we had those issues, but we wanted to lock down the build a week out so that we could look and see, okay, we have those issues, check. Do we have any other issues? Are there any game breakers? So this doesn't look good. It's probably going to be an issue when people come in, blah blah blah. But it's a known quantity. It's like it's something where this isn't ideal, but it's known. And we really just wanted to make sure the rest of the build had, it was playable, was good, and we just kept it locked down. And then we apologized. Hey, we wish everything would be perfect going into this weekend, but it's not. And so we had ideas on things that we wanted to change and implement. But we just didn't want to risk breaking new shit and having you guys not be able to play at all, right? So if we're like, oh yeah, we just tweaked this and we tweaked that and we fixed this other thing, everything's going to be perfect. And all of a sudden, whatever, the muffler falls off and shit just starts breaking left and right, then you couldn't play at all. I think you'd be more upset to not be able to play at all, especially people that took time off and stuff, than if you just have like a so-so experience on certain, in zones with high pop. So we're now making all those changes. We're going to test all of those changes internally a bit, and then don't be surprised if we have another stress test in a not too distant future. Dude, Super Nintendo Zombies Ate My Neighbors is it was such a good game. Why was that game so good? That was one of my favorite games, dude. It was so good. It was one of those games that just felt so much bigger than it was. It was just like, oh shit, every once in a while you run into a game and you're just like... Rock and Roll Racing, solid as well. Golden Axe, good one. Stress test like single day or play test like whole weekend? If we have a stress test coming up anytime soon, it's very likely just going to be a stress test for a day. Stress test for a few hours, something along those lines. I don't want to speak out of turn or too far out of turn. I think our hope moving forward is to not have such long gaps between playtests, because it's a lot of time to introduce code and stuff where, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, this is running a little different than we thought it was going to, because we haven't had players in 6 months. I think that's what we ran into a bit in this last month's press test. D Loves Pudding says, you're friends with executive producer Rock and Roll Racing, FYI. I think that's a really, I don't know. To me, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm more inspired by that era of Blizzard's sort of evolution, Silicon Synapse sort of evolution, than later in the company's life cycle. Just not to say that there's anything bad, but it's more of it's interesting how often people forget where great companies start. So, there's the hubris of wanting to make a great company that's like, and then boom, we make a WoW. And then there's the hubris of, hey, it'd be really cool if we could, be a Silicon and Synapse that eventually grows into a Blizzard. But maybe not ever that big. you know, and my left hand hubris is the one that I prefer, I guess. You heard it here first. Playtest every weekend. Oh man, no, we don't. We don't want you to get tired of the game. We want you to stick around once early access comes and we got more stuff for you. Hey babe. What was the first game that made me fall in love with gaming? Yours were Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and Might and Magic 6, both 95, 96. I think, you know, I was very fortunate to my parents were real young when they had me, so they were real good about, and my dad was in the army, so they were real good about dropping me off at the arcade on base or like the bowling alley or whatever where there's arcade machines. And I also was fortunate enough, we lived in Germany at the time, but I was fortunate enough to get an Atari 2600. So that kind of set it, but I think the thing that really got me into gaming was I had a shitload of Legos and a shitload of spare time, because even when I was like 8, I was like, I was a latchkey kid. And so my parents had bought me, because we lived in Germany, they'd bought me a lot of the Knights and Castle Legos. And I would watch people play Dragon's Lair in the arcade. And then I would come home and I would try to create like Dragon's Lair levels with my Legos and then pretend like I'm playing the game. And so I'd have to move my dude through the maps and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, I do think our whole generation was latchkey. And so that kind of got me started. But then the thing that really like set the hook for me, both happened in the same period of time. We lived at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and 3 things happened at the same time. 4 things happened at the same time, right? Like I was already very interested in Dungeons and Dragons from living in Germany, because the older kids played D&D and the soldiers played D&D, and I lived in a tiny village with a ruined castle on one hill and a castle that was refurbished into a nice hotel on another hill, and we had a beautiful river, it was a stream, that we would play in. And my village basically looked like it was out of Harry Potter, because it's southern Germany. And like I was watching completely inappropriate movies like Sword and Sorcerer or whatever that shit was, with the scary dude that rips the guy's heart out, and all this other stuff on VHS. And like, and Tolkien was a thing. So I was super into fantasy immediately. And then we moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and on base at the library, they had an Apple II. And Apple II or Apple IIe, and it had Ultima on it. And so I like grabbed the disc, you know, sign out the disc. When we were in Germany, my dad was in Bad Kreuznach and I lived in Stromberg. And so, but at Fort Campbell, I was then skipping school and playing D&D. I was like 11, and so it's like getting into my early skipping school stage, and we would meet up and play D&D at the library. And when my friends weren't around, I would play Ultima on the library computer, and like Ultima blew my mind. And then what happened? The other 2 things that happened were, my grandmother and my parents all chipped in, and they found on base on sale Commodore 128. And so I immediately got to play Wizardry, Bard's Tale 2, Might and Magic, all sorts of just random ass games. And so boom, fantasy hook was set. And also just RPG and like video games. Yeah, eventually Pool of Radiance, Curse of the Azure Bonds, right? Like the SSI games. So that was going on my computer, and we had friends, like we would all get together and like sit around the computer and play Wizardry, and everybody be, oh, do this, do that, right? Like that old school huddle around the computer shit. And then my dad, we were at the mall and I saw Legend of Zelda And I don't think I'd read anything about it or anything, but I saw the box and I was like blown away because the cartridge was gold. In it, you know, you could see like Link and all that shit. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta have this. And so I ran and found my parents and was like, I don't ask for anything, not true. But you really gotta buy me this. Like, I gotta have this thing because for Christmas I got a Nintendo. And I was like, I gotta get this game. And my dad was like, no, it's not gonna happen. Right. And I was so bummed. I'm like, tears, you know, like, oh shit, you know, like I've got to have this. My life depends on this. And my dad, we get in the car and I'm devastated. And my dad pulled up his shirt and pulled out Nintendo, the Legend of Zelda, you know, gold cartridge and was like, hey, I got this for you. Stop crying. And I was like, oh shit. So I was just like holding it. And as soon as we got home, man, boom, cartridge in. And that was the first time I think my parents saw me not leave the room for like 2 days straight, like the entire weekend. And I think it was the first time that I did like the legit come out long enough to eat, run back in, quickly, you know, leave to like piss and come back or whatever, and just stayed focused on it until I beat the game over the weekend. And Legend of Zelda melted my brain. It was so good. So yeah, dude. That's the history of like video games. That's why I'm into it. Thank you for listening. And so that said, I was a dummy. Like I played games forever from that point, but I never like committed to learning how to program. I did basic in school, but once I was through school, I never once I got to high school, I split my time between playing D&D or Shadowrun or whatever occasionally, skateboarding, and just partying way too much for a high schooler. And so, but in the Army, I continued to play video games. I always had a console, always had a PC. I was playing Doom and Marathon and shit like that when I was in the Army. And then when I got out, playing a lot of Quake. And that's how I found out about EQ. And here we are. So, Irate Turk said, my friend had the basic opposite story of that. He begged his dad for a Nintendo, and he had this big Nintendo-shaped Christmas present, and Christmas Day came, and he opened a box, and it was Teach Yourself German VHS series. Oh, shit. That is horrible. But we like to think that's where things first started to go wrong for him. Oh. Does he speak German? Wo ist dein Freund? Kann mit mir Deutsch reden? Hey, who knows? Did he not move to... He barely speaks English? Wait. Was he already German and he just needed the DVDs? My smart-ass German wife just asked. Did he find himself a nice German girl? His family's from Iran, living in London. Oh, right on. Seems interesting they would try to get him to speak German. His dad was an academic type and was like, you're learning German, bro. You never know when it's going to come in handy. They have a way of taking over every once in a while. Nicodemus said, when I was a kid, my mother would leave me in the toy store at the mall for hours while she did her shopping. In the back of the store on a Saturday, would have first edition game going on. As a Gen Xer, no supervision. Exactly. Man, I loved growing up in the barracks for that reason. Ang7 said, no lie. Where in time is Carmen Sandiego? San Diego. Did wonders for my vocabulary. Yeah. Mavis Beacon with the typing. I think EverQuest taught me to type a billion times better, but she got me started. Jasmine, have you ever heard of Muzzy in Gondoland? No. You learned German in a different way. my desire to EQ in the dark taught me touch typing. I could definitely see that, short talk. Yep. I mean, it just kind of happened, right? Trauma said playing text-based MUDs, 2 towers, are what got my typing speed up more than anything. Ang7 says, dude, raids without voice chat, EQ is insane. It's crazy, right? I mean, some people had like Roger Wilco or whatever, but yeah, there's a lot of typing. Cool. All right, guys. You know what? It's been awesome hanging out with you tonight. Is anybody on the team streaming? Could I throw over to anybody? Let me check Slack. I haven't been checking Slack. Any of our folks streaming? I don't see anything mentioned. Parade Panth? That would be cool. That would be nice. Little payback. Open servers will stream it. Yeah, so I tell you what, let's do that actually. If Panth is streaming, let's raid him. And I'll take a minute to say hi to him before I go to pop off here. But 10:38 my time. Jasmine's still awake, which is nice for a change. We can actually go to sleep at the same time. Thank you everybody for being here. On nights where I raid, I don't do as good a job of saying thank you to everybody and saying goodnight to everybody. If you catch me on a different night, then I will try to say thank you to everybody that says thank you to me and goodnight, because we do that here. It's kind of like the Waltons, only with a bigger cast. So, you know, let's do that a little bit, but stick around for Panth. He's fantastic, and you'll get to see some EQ, I'm assuming, which will be fun. So let's see. Mighty Njal, thank you as well. Thanks for popping in here. Good to see you. Puddin', yep. Nick needs to stream so we don't bombard Zukin with Nick questions again. Yeah, he'll get there. He'll come back. Sirenth, see ya, buddy. Thank you, Nicodemus. See you in Slack this week. You're very welcome. Irate Kirk, Kielich, Blight, Thulan, Longilla. Is it Longilla or is it Longia? Migs, see ya. See ya, Puddin'. Judaddy1. Good to meet you tonight. I don't think I've seen you in here before. Have a great one. Defiant Possum. Have a happy 4th. Oh yeah, all you Americans. Hell yeah, have a happy 4th of July. Be safe out there. Drink a beer, blow some stuff up. Hopefully not yourself. But enjoy the 4th. I'm jealous. I love me some 4th of July. Go America. Yo team. Moscow, Darius, see ya. Mulberry. Hey, thanks for popping in. It was really cool to have you on. Now you're immortal. You'll forever be a VOD. And I'll see you in Discord. Stonelistic, see ya. Twyvern, happy holiday to you as well. And thanks for coming in here so I can engage with you. The least I can do. Chili Sauce, see ya. UK Rads, you have a good one as well. You're welcome, Lasava. G Willikers, you're welcome. Telethicus, I love that name. Caladim, more like Calat. Anyway, have a good one. Longilla, alright. Cool, Mandalorian, see ya. Esan, see ya, brother. Short Talk, Brent. I'm glad you enjoyed the test. Octowisp, right on. Dragon, see ya, buddy. Alright, let's raid. Let's raid. Let's see if I can not screw this up this time. Somehow I get nervous every single raid. I don't know why. Do you ever get nervous? Pan. Right there. He's right there. Raid him. Come on. Do it. Twitch. Start raid. We're gonna do it. Oh, I know what I did last time. I forgot to stop Streamlabs after the raid. That's what weird thing happened last time. I just sat here picking my nose. All right, raid now. See you guys there.
What's the fucking spell?
Confirmed that
Getting
it worked.
irritated. The fucking
Ooh.
constantly getting interrupted. Holy shit.